Welcome back, gentle listeners, to another News Fist interview. Fist of Views. I'm still not settled on the name. It's been a while. I have been traveling, but I have an excellent episode lined up for you tonight. We have Not Me, Not You, one of the founding members of the Old Glory Club, and generally a very, very nice chap. And we're going to have a chat tonight about spiritual warfare, which is something that I got into a long conversation with him about at the conference, and thought we should go over again. Curtis, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, brother. It's good to be on with you. This is my first time on a Fist of You, but we've been on Yiz's DD before, and I've known you not like super well, but for years we've been at the same conference together. So
yeah, and of course through years, who literally knows everybody. It's crazy. The number of people she knows, it's amazing. So you sent me this article on the wait, hang on, what was it called? Evil Op4, Op4, right? Which was basically right, like if we were fighting evil, right, as a general of God's army, how would we sort of how would we model the behavior of the enemy, essentially, right, is what it's getting at. And this is quite an interesting article, right? To break it down, wait, who's the guy who actually wrote this? Tree of Woe. I don't know who that is, but it's cool.
Oh, yeah, he's a substacker. He puts out a lot of really interesting stuff. This is from a couple of years ago, but he's drawing on Professor Bruce Charlton, who has a blog that he writes under, but please.
Yeah, right. So yeah, Professor Bruce Charlton. So I'll stick a linky to this in the description. But the interesting idea is that he basically breaks this down into three kinds of evil, which is, I haven't heard it framed this way before. Not 100% I entirely subscribe to this, but I mean, it's quite interesting, right? So the first type of evil he calls Luciferic evil, which is sort of just sort of rebellion for the sake of rebellion, basically, right? You're running around non-serviam, I will not serve, represents the first stage of evil. It's anti-authoritarian, individualist, and rebellious aspect, which seeks to overthrow the natural order to maximize freedom of action. Luciferian evil is often attractive in the lustful blood and song manner of ancient pagan heroes, pirates, and rebels. Charlton argues that Luciferic evil dominated the sexual revolution of the 1960s, as well as certain aspects of the libertarian movement. It is impulsive, instinctive, self-gratifying, psychopathic kind of evil as characterized by the frenzied violence and torture of unbridled war, or the greedy lustfulness that drives the sexual revolution, the 60s impulse. I mean, that's kind of, I do kind of like that, right? It's the idea that this sort of phase of evil is basically sort of everyone just running around and being like, it's like that Rage Against the Machine song. What was it called? Killing in the Name of. Right?
Is that when he says, how can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Is this when he says, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which my favorite meme is, during COVID, it's got his face and it says, fuck you, do what they tell you.
See, the way they cucked during COVID was hilarious, man. Oh my, look, I still remember fucking, being like a young goth, and and that was being played, and we were all leaping around wearing exactly the same uniform, basically at the same time, being like, yeah, fuck you. I mean, we're all individuals, man. We're gonna rebel, and our rebellion basically was to reject Christianity, do a shitload of drugs, engage in meaningless, pointless sex, and be miserable. Yay! So
yeah,
we really stuck it to the man.
Oh yeah,
right. The people in power They were afraid of the goths, right? We weren't sort of like participating in any of their systems of capitalism. Oh wait, yeah, we weren't, like participating in their system. Oh wait, yeah, we were. Oh my god, my misspent youth. Sorry, I just quite a bit of a tangent.
Well, I mean, there might be something to that. Billy Corgan is famous for saying that, the lead singer of Smashing Pumpkins, that in the late '90s, the CIA came down on metal, on rock and roll, because they were basically afraid that the white man was getting a little too angry.
Interesting. Is that why like rap suddenly came to like just dominate everything? Because
Yeah,
I
that's
don't know that the black man being angry was not a problem because they're so unfocused.
yeah. I mean, that's kind of the contention, right? Like if white men are listening to new metal, or Limp Bizkit is telling them to break stuff, and getting riled up to go out and do things, and then it's replaced by emo and this kind of Mumford and Sons, which I call Mumford and Sons has some songs that are absolutely positively simp anthems.
Yeah.
Which is that stuff becoming more popular. Definitely, it would make, if you were trying to make the white man more passive, I could definitely see that being a good avenue.
Yeah, a symphony, you might say. I mean, it's true. Like, I remember, all this stuff like, Radiohead, and just the way like so
Mm.
much white music just became like, I guess there's nothing I can do, but I love this like girl, even though she like doesn't know anything about me, and I wish I had some agency. Pathetic, right? I mean, like, at least, I don't know. I mean, a lot of goth stuff was like basically pathetic as well. But there was that sort of, more like metal edge to like a lot of it. That was,
Yeah, I was a metalhead growing up. So like, we listened to like I listened to a lot of Children of Bodom, which is a lot of like, it's songs about like breaking stuff and murder and stuff like that. It's a little bit more energetic. But it's still got that it's got a hard edge, but it's still very Luciferic in its outlook.
so, I mean, I guess the thing that you could say about in this concept, right, of Luciferian evil, is that it sort of burns itself out, because there's nowhere really for it to go past a certain point, right? Like, you rebel against authority, you'd be like, nah, Vicky, I won't do what you tell me, and then someone else comes along and you do what they tell you. Or, I mean, like, it seems like what's that Shakespeare quote about like light, sound and fury signifying nothing,
Mm.
basically. It's just an explosion of like, "Ruah," and then nothing much happens. If you
Yeah,
get
I mean, if we're talking about it in like the light of Lucifer's rebellion against God, it's the rebellion against the natural world, it's the rebellion against order itself. And I don't know if I'm going to talk about the Jews a little bit later when we're talking about the next phase of evil.
Mhm.
But the Luciferic evil, feminism, right? Breaking, Yaki said that feminism has liberated women from the natural dignity of their sex so that they can become inferior men. Right? Like
Yeah.
it's this liberation from one's nature, this liberation from the natural restraints of society and reality. I mean, we see this in the trans thing, right? Like
Yeah.
that is the ultimate Luciferic evil. You are rejecting not just society's structure, but the very being that you are. You reject yourself as a being because it's constraining.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess, like liberation for liberation's sake, without any real thought of the consequences long term. You know what I mean, right? Like, this whole sort of like rebellion thing. Like, no one, no, I remember at the time, right? Like, no one had any kind of actual long term sense of where any of this shit was going. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I think you see this very, very clearly as well in the sexual revolution in the 60s, right? It's just break stuff. Well, what do we do after we break stuff. Bro, don't be a downer, bro. We've still got to like, there's more stuff that we can like break, bro. We'll worry about that. Like, what are you? Some kind of like a square? And if someone's like, yeah, but once we've broken all the stuff, what do we do then? Right? Like, I just don't remember anyone at the time having any kind of like concrete view of the future at all. In fact, it was a very, very bleak time, generally speaking, right? Like the 90s and the early 2000s among that scene. It was just a very sort of negative image of everything. There wasn't anything constructive, like really at all. I suppose there's probably a lot of people who still feel that way, I guess, or they're just like, you know, listen, once we've like broken everything that exists, like, you know, a new, I don't know, spontaneous order will emerge. I mean, that's like the negative dialectic from Horkheimer, you know what I mean? But you know, I wouldn't regard people like Horkheimer and Adorno as sort of the Luciferian. I mean, partially, but I think that's just a preparatory stage to the next one. You know what I mean?
So I think, I mean, I don't want to get off of Luciferic just yet, but I think like that's exactly what I was going to bring up, that Luciferic evil is the gateway drug, right? It's the it's preparing the seedbed for the next kind of evil. But you know, it's what you were saying about it's all negative vision, what Charlton's saying in this quote here, and you know, that it's impulsive, instinctive, self-gratifying, and psychopathic, right? It's not looking for any kind of future aim or future goal. It's for an immediate gratification of these kind of urges that you have. And, you know, it's kind of easy to say, well, I have all these urges that are human and natural, and I'm told by society that I'm supposed to restrain them, but nobody ever tells me why I'm supposed to restrain them. And part of that is obviously, you know, the people who took over the culture-bearing apparatus, the news media, Hollywood, the things that are teaching the public what to think and what to believe and what their values are, that they are intentionally seeding this kind of idea that all restrictions are arbitrary, and that, as you said, if you're kind of able to bring all of this down, you return to this kind of Rousseauian state of nature, where everybody is just nice to each other, and it's you know, it's luxury space communism for everybody, if we just don't have any restrictions on anyone's like base impulses.
Man, Rousseau is such a freaking idiot. I just
didn't he like abandon his children and all that kind of shit?
Yeah, it's when you actually get into looking at these thinkers, a lot of them do that. You know what I mean? But this, you know, this idea that Rousseau had, that you know, essentially, because you know, as you may be aware, like this all came out of the argument of the state of nature, like principally between him and Hobbes, right? About like what was the form of man before civilization came along, and this was sort of spurred by the fact that they were starting to like contact places like Africa and India, and they were seeing, you know, uncontacted tribes, right? And Hobbes's thing was that basically before civilization all was barbarism. Turns out he was correct. And Rousseau's assertion was that before civilization in the state of nature, like everything was awesome, man. And then somebody came up with the idea of thinking of themselves in relation to someone else, right, as being better than or lesser than. And then they parlayed this idea into property, and that as a result, that's why everything be bad, man. I mean, but the other thing as well that I noticed is that, you know, you're saying like, you know, society tells you to control the passions. Well, where I was growing up, that was the complete opposite, actually. You know, the when I grew up, it was sort of like the end point of the stuff that like started with Freud, and then worked its way through with like places like the Esalen Institute and, you know, all these kind of people. The idea that it was in fact injurious to the soul to control your passions, right? They called it repression, right? Repression was like the worst. All psychological problems were caused by not giving vent to your passions. You know what I mean? And so, you know, everything was like awesome. Masturbation was great and healthy, and all of this, like basically the way it was never quite put in these terms, but what they were basically saying was that the reason why we had World War II is because the snazzies were all uptight, man. Right? Like really, like again, it's interesting how you absorb a lot of these cultural beliefs that are never clearly stated. They are just sort of inferred, because to state it too clearly might make people sort of be like, wait, does that make sense? Right? So instead you sort of infer these sort of fundamental beliefs through the statement of sort of adjacent beliefs, if you get what I mean, right? But that was basically what it was, right? Which was then sort of parlayed into like, you know, like why whites were like so bad, and why, like, you know, bad stuff happened because they were all uptight, and the reason they were all uptight is because they didn't get laid enough, don't you know? And that's I mean, that's basically it. It's insane.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when we're talking about Freud, we're talking about a Jew who derived all of his kind of ideas from his psychoanalysis of other Jews. So he's taking these like hyper neurotic people who, you know, they hate their mother, they hate their wives, they hate themselves, and they're in this new environment in America where they're rubbing shoulder to shoulder with the WASPs, and the WASPs don't seem to have, you know, these same kinds of problems. And so, you know, there's this ordeal of civility that's happening on a civilizational scale, and Freud's trying to figure out why, like, basically when he's applying this thing to all men, he should just be applying it to Jews, which again brings us back, like it's like this kind of black hole you can't get out of, where, you know, when you're talking about even this tripartite nature of evil, you end up talking about the Jews and their hand in it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the ordeal of civility is really interesting. It actually occurred to me the other day that in places like London, it's actually now the white population that must undergo the ordeal of civility, because civility has been sort of like so comprehensively redefined to be sort of like everything that you're not, if that makes sense, right? So you undergo this ordeal of having to basically engage and enmesh with all of these social mores that are just completely counter to your character. So, you know, it's like, I guess, you know, in the end, right, it was us that had to eventually undergo the ordeal of civility. Take that, whites.
Yeah. Take that, civilization.
Take that, civilization. Okay. So the next form of evil is Ahrimanic evil, right? Ahrimanic evil is named for Ahriman, the Zoroastrian adversary of Ahura Mazda, who legend has it made a pretty good car. Unlike Lucifer, Ahriman was not a rebel. Rather, he is a full-fledged counter-sovereign, implacably opposed to God, though one lacking in the creative capacity, Charlton explains. Although I want to point out, right, that if I remember correctly, under Zoroastrianism, Zoroastrianism was sort of monotheist in the sense, right, much like Judaism, of this idea that above good and evil there was this unifying force, right? That if you could somehow recombine good and evil into this like force, which is not a part of Christianity, right? There's not a bit in Christianity that says like, hey, bro, you know, the way that you defeat Satan is, well, you do a bit of good and you do a bit of evil, and then once like God and Satan are like reunited, you get like, no, that's not how that shit works. Like,
yeah, I mean, it was kind of I mean, the Gnostic heresies with their idea of the Godhead or the pleroma kind of flirted with that. I don't know if the pleroma included negative aspects, but I know that it was supposed to be like, you know, the form of all concepts. So like, you know, time, pride, love, that sort of stuff.
Under Valentinian Gnosticism, which is the only one I really know like a ton about, the way that the demiurge was formed, let me see if I got this right. So the Sophia tried to like birth a new universe by herself, right? And one of the other, I don't know, gods or whatever was like, no, Sophia, you shouldn't do that. It's probably a bad idea. And Sophia is like, no, I know what I'm doing. It's all cool, right? And so she tried to birth another universe, right? And fucked it up. And as a result, the demiurge got trapped in his own pocket universe, right? And since he was trapped alone in a pocket universe, he believed himself to be sovereign over everything, but was also alone and therefore went insane. And that's why under Gnosticism, right? Like, the Sophia is like so far away and all this kind of like other like happy horse shit, basically. But that was the original idea. The demiurge was born in his own pocket universe and basically.
Yeah, but this is kind of what I'm like the godhead of which Sophia is an aspect, right? Like each aspect has apparently its own kind of, I don't know, existence that is separate from but also a part of the godhead. Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much my understanding of it too. Although, the stories change. Sophia either wanted to do this or she did it by accident. But whatever. I do think it's interesting that the Hagia Sophia is named after Sophia, and you don't like I don't know what the how big that kind of aspect was in early Christianity. Because I know that the early church fathers did their best to kind of smack Gnosticism down, but I mean that's beside the point.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I should check that out. So, unlike Lucifer, Ahriman is not a rebel, not the leather coat and sunglasses from Hot Topic for Ahriman, right? He is rather a full-fledged counter-sovereign, implacably opposed to God, although one lacking in the creative capacity. Charlton explains, Ahrimanic evil aims to create a system of value inversions where virtue becomes vice, while sin is encouraged and rewarded. Truth becomes hate facts and fake news, while lies are science, etc. This system will, by such means as law, media propaganda, and corporate regulations, subversively process people into a social structure that is anti-God, anti-Christian, and anti-good. Excuse me. The Ahrimanic evil is more modern. It is the despair-inducing, soul-destroying, utterly demotivating iron cage of totalitarian bureaucracy, where all is a single system and all men are merely cogs to serve it. This is the evil of the late Soviet communism, of the Borg, of the over-promoted middle manager, head girl type that increasingly runs large organizations, corporations, and Western nations. Now, the thing is, I don't think it's a modern thing at all. I would actually describe rabbinical Judaism that existed at the time of Christ is exactly this.
Yeah.
If you think of the story of the pools of Bethesda, Bethesda, right? There's like a guy there, right? He's been like, lying paralyzed on like a pallet for like, 30 something years, trying to like get down to the pool because allegedly like when the water stirs in the wind, right, you can be like healed. Jesus comes along, heals the guy, says, take up your pallet and walk, right? And he's like walking away, and the Jews come along and they're like, oi, it's the Sabbath. You shouldn't be carrying your pallet around, right? The guy's like, dude, I just got like, I was, basically crippled for 30 years. I was just healed, and you're at me for like carrying my only possession on the Sabbath, right? So, and they'd be like, yeah, but it's the law, right? So the law becomes instead of an instrument of justice, purely a partial instrument of oppression. I think a lot of places in the West, it's actually getting that way now, right? Like the law becomes so complex as to be incomprehensible. And then once it becomes incomprehensible, you get a sort of a priestly class, in effect, the lawyers that can shield those who hire their services from the consequences of the law. And even those who enforce the law, the police, they don't even know what the bloody law is as well. So it just basically becomes like, just do what I say, and they just quote like nonsense crap at you.
Yeah, I mean it's perfect. So this is a different person he's quoting in the article, but Tykonovich, this guy is an American author. He's living in Taiwan, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, he says non servum is Lucifer's motto, not Ahriman's. If Ahrimanism were condensed into a 2-word motto, it would be safety first. Or if more than 2 words are needed, none are safe until all are safe. So it's this kind of hyper control from the earthly realm. And I think that when you reach back to rabbinic Judaism, there are specific sects of Kabbalists who believe exactly this, that inverting the values that God has given humanity through the Bible is the proper way to kind of become gods ourselves. It kind of frees us. Again, it's kind of this Gnostic idea, but almost an inverted Christian Gnosticism.
Yeah, no, that's antinomianism, and it does predate Gnosticism, if I remember correctly. Just this idea
definitely.
that the way to get closer to God is to sin, and sin bigly. It always struck me that this always sounded to me like just the perfect excuse for bad behavior, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just, you want to do a bunch of like awful stuff, and you're just like, hey, being really evil is like actually totally awesome. Like, we should do more of that. I feel like, liberated from the, I feel closer to God. The Sabbateans were like this. The Frankists were also like this. There've been like antinomian sects, like, throughout history. But yes, this idea that it is, I don't know, holy in some sense to like invert the law, and I guess it must give a sort of very separate kind of cult-like atmosphere, I guess. Like, we are the anointed, we are the enlightened, we are the ones, the only people who understand that, in order to be holy, you must sin as much as possible. I think one of the excuses for antinomianism, actually Christian antinomianism, was that since the best part of Christianity was being forgiven by God, what you really needed to do was rack up as many sins as possible, so you can
get the biggest forgiveness.
Yeah, so your forgiveness would be like as epic as possible, which, I mean, is clearly not like what they were going for. But yeah.
I mean, there is kind of a twisted logic in that, right? Like, because we've got the story of the prodigal son, and like this idea that those who come back are greater than those who stayed in the whole time, right? But it's like,
sure. But,
you're kind of playing dice with God here. Like, is your life going to be long enough for you to actually repent of these things, and is your repentance going to be genuine? If like alas for the Jews, God knows when you're trying to screw him, right?
Yes, precisely, right. And isn't the point of the prodigal son that you're confused or you're led astray? Not that precisely what is expected of you, and you're just like, yeah, I'm going to completely do the opposite, and haha, God, you still have to forgive me. Sucks to be you, God, right? Well, like God doesn't know.
Hoisted by your own petard.
See, I mean, again, this is a very Jewish interpretation, right? Like, you can just see a rabbi coming up with this and being like, well, actually, since God is confined by his own rules, oh my God, yeah.
I mean, but it's also like, if we're talking about how Ahrimanic evil uses Luciferian evil to its ends, we can look at the 20th century Jews like Theodore Adorno, who you mentioned already, and Levinson, who in the authoritarian personality, they go to great lengths to basically say these things that you think are good, family, order, justice, being sexually chaste, or being sexual only within the bounds of marriage, these things are actually evil, and that in order to create the earthly utopia that is what my imagined version of communism, we have to break down all of the things that you think are good with its opposite. I mean, Adorno specifically says they have to use eros, they have to use lust in order to get people to do this. And how do you get, because everyone's got this lust inside of them, obviously, and 2,000 years of Christian tradition is understanding that you have to wrestle with that for the greater good of not only your soul but of the society around you. And to have these people come in, say, no, actually we have to do the exact opposite to ensure that the mid-century Germans never rise again, is turn everything on its head. We have to turn all of your values around. We have to turn them all upside down. And we're going to tell you that this is liberating you from these arbitrary restrictions that didn't actually benefit you to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, it's so stupid. I mean, the thing that always struck me about Horkheimer, and his dialectic of materialism, what is it, the dialectic of materialism, I think, was how you couldn't define what the utopia is, right? You can only define what it isn't. So you just go around like breaking everything, right? And then once everything has been destroyed, the utopia will just emerge like all of a sudden from this pile of broken and smashed crap, right? I really wonder whether they really thought that, or whether they were just trying to like intellectualize a urge to just destroy. Quite frankly, I don't know.
I mean, this is kind of an aside, and it actually lends itself to the next type of evil. So maybe I'll hold it for that if you wanted to keep on Ahrimanic.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just finish off on this bit. What Charlton and Tychonovich call Ahrimanic evil equates to what Guion and Evola. I haven't read either of those. I'm going to get my like right wing card revoked. I know. It's like, oh my god, you haven't read Evola? No. Called counter tradition, having allowed Luciferic evil to clear the field of the physiocratic or cosmic order based on beauty, goodness, and truth. Ahrimanic evil proceeds to implement the Black Iron Prison. Oh, mate, that's a term I haven't heard for a while. Philip K. Dick, reader, of our contemporary consensus, a system of control over our thoughts and actions. This traditionalist analysis of the occult war stops with Ahrimanic evil. Charlton and his cohorts, however, believe Ahrimanic evil is being subsumed by its successor, Sorathic evil. So, I guess this is where it gets like quite interesting. Okay, so Ahrimanic evil is like, you invert everything, right? Ugliness becomes beauty, vice becomes virtue, everything is inverted. You see it a lot in the modern world. Like, what's the most virtuous thing you can do? Find a butt buddy and go to a pride parade and like, shake your junk in front of the kitty winks. You know what I mean? Because like that's like so heckin' wholesome chungus now, right? But this leads on to the Sorathic evil, which is explained by Charlton as the purest and most absolutely negative form of evil. If Luciferic evil is motivated by short-termist pleasure, while Ahrimanic evil is motivated by God denial, spiritual blindness, and reductionism towards a meaningless world of mechanical procedures, or antinomianism, I guess, then the Sorathic impulse is driven by negative impulses, primarily fear, resentment, and hatred. See, I would argue annihilation is really what this final form of evil is about. It is just to annihilate everything. And I think this comes about as well because when people follow this prescription, they destroy everything that exists, and they're sitting in the mud, like surrounded by a bunch of like broken crap, and the utopia still hasn't manifested itself. Since the passions cannot be in any sense controlled, they must be further amplified. And of course, the next stage of amplification is to just destroy all that exists around you and just start killing people, basically.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing this Sorathic evil manifesting itself. I mean, we see it very much in the progressives that, now that the right wing actually has a voice, online or in the West, I should say, the progressives are kind of going mask off and saying like, yes, we're bringing the third world here as revenge. We're bringing the third world here to destroy what you've built, what your ancestors have built. That's why this is happening. This is Sorathic, right? It's not just the inversion of good in order to kind of reach some other goal or to kind of control a society. It's the impulse to destroy, as you say. And
Yes.
we are also seeing it in a more personal way among, once again, trannies. Very famously or infamously, I mean, there's so many of them, it's kind of hard to remember, but the one of the troons that shot up a church and killed a bunch of kids had drawings of himself looking in the mirror, and there's just a demon looking back. Right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
when you've given your soul over to this this Luciferic evil, which is the denial of all constraint, you're accepting this demon into you, and that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing the end goal of these demons is not just the annihilation of the self, because these people would just commit suicide, which they do in large number, but they also, a lot of them are kind of driven to just erase everything.
Well, I mean, sort of by definition, right? If the demon takes over someone completely, then that is the annihilation of the self. The demon replaces the self, and then
Hmm.
instead of an actual person, you just get like a shell filled with some catonic horror, essentially, right? It always struck me like how similar the urge between like the troon shooters and like the African stabnigs is, you know what I mean, right? This, oh my god, I must just kill as many like white children as I possibly can, you know like they seem to really love that, right? Like regardless, it's so this just demonic annihilation. And I think the Sorathic evil is where you start, I guess, getting a very significant number of people in your society basically walking around just in full possession. You know what I mean? I know some listeners might not believe that, but fucking you haven't seen what I've seen, so shut the fuck up. And if and taken from that view, right, that you can have people that are just hollowed out and being ridden by these like complete like ink blots of darkness, it would make sense that they would be driven to just anger and rage by anything that is in any way wholesome or good or restrained. Like it becomes just this frenzy of violence and horror, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, have you seen? I mean, this is a dated pop culture reference now that I'm old. Have you seen the movie Dogma?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for the viewer who hasn't seen the movie, it's Kevin Smith. It's the guy who did Jay and Silent Bob. It's a it's kind of it's a movie that's kind of making fun of Christianity. I mean, it's making fun of Christianity in a big way, but it has some interesting aspects in it. The antagonist is trying to make something happen that would cause God's word to be wrong. It would cause God to be wrong. And his argument is that his belief is that if God is proven to be wrong, then existence just ceases. So when he's asked by one of the characters why he would want to destroy everything because it means his destruction too, he says, have you ever been to hell? I'd rather not exist than have to go back.
Yeah.
Which is this is kind of the impetus. I mean, the author is drawing on these other authors who are talking about this, Charlton and Tykonovich, who argue that the purpose is to maximize damnation rather than maximize non-existence or to attain non-existence, but the effect is kind of the same. It's the annihilation of life. It's the annihilation of creation. I don't know if you want to continue to read because he goes into a little bit more of this.
Yeah. Well, Tychonovich basically says that mankind is divided into more and more smaller and smaller self-identified victim groups, each resentful of and pitted against each other. The aim is eventually for each person to feel alone, consumed by feelings of thwarted entitlement, hatred of the world, and living in permanent fear. See, that's not the way the way I sort of like look at this is stuff like the French Revolution or the Haitian Revolution, right? Like just continual sort of orgies of like mass killing, essentially, right? Like, which you could say is sort of Luciferic, but the Luciferic impulse is more just rebellion, whereas the Sorathic impulse is the complete annihilation of whatever good is left, right? Like I think the Bolsheviks could be well described in this way, right? And it makes me wonder like how much of this is an attempt at sacrifice to fuel some kind of like, greater horror, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that the reference to the Bolsheviks is very apt in this regard, right? Like, so I don't know the provenance or the truth behind this story, but allegedly, when the Bolsheviks, killed the last royal family of Russia, why can't I remember their name?
Oh, Tsar Nicholas.
Yeah, when they killed him,
The
the
Romanovs.
Romanovs, when they killed the Romanov family, allegedly, they used their viscera to create symbols and to perform a ritual. And I know that there are some rather internet famous theologians who believe that this actually is what kind of brought Satan to earth for you know for the entirety of the 20th century and today. But I could absolutely see that that this negation of good by I mean, again, we're back to this, right? Like the Bolsheviks, we know that people who drove this stuff forward were Jews, who were kind of, anyway, it's kind of a boring point at this point in a lot of our development to say, it was the Jews, because like, well, yeah, you see it everywhere all the time. But this impulse is it's in everyone, right? It's in all peoples, and it requires, but it does require that the Christian ethos be denied, that people be convinced that good is evil and evil is good, and then finally it can kind of culminate in this annihilation.
Well, the thing is, right, I think I was talking about this earlier, right? If we take this idea that many of these mass events are like sacrifices to some sort of horror, it always burns itself out, though, right? Like at the time, they imagine, or they are told by whatever, horror they are in league with. Oh, this is it's going to be like forever, bros, right? But it never is, right? Because these things they burn themselves out, and none of the entities that these people are working with are ever going to be like honest, right? And they are ravenous. They are passion personified. Okay, so they always require more and more and more blood. They don't have an off switch. Eventually, they run out, and whatever effect was sort of summoned through that horrific letting of blood basically sort of like dissipates, which makes me wonder actually about the Aztecs, because the Aztecs seem to have developed like a society where they were sort of on the edge of that kind of like, evil, but they sort of kept it in check. They're like, okay, so, instead of just killing everybody, we'll just keep killing a certain number of people like all the time and sort of like try and, keep it on the edge, right? Like keep edging, like, whatever horror they're trying to like sate. Excuse me. Okay, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to jump in on your saying it burns itself out, right?
Yeah.
Like you're right, it does, and it necessarily has to, right? What the people who take on the task of fighting against God and fighting against creation, you know, it's futile, right? It has to be. You can't unmake the world. You can't unmake the natural order. It reasserts itself um, after a certain amount of time because technology has this kind of way of being able to separate man from the nature of the world, where you can start to think that maybe he's not a part of nature, or maybe that nature isn't set, doesn't have these kind of rule sets or have these constraints at all, and that with our own technology we can kind of get away from them. And that's obviously not true, because we are a part of creation. But you mentioned, when we were talking about the Ahrimanic evil, that these people think they can smash everything in sight and then somehow reach utopia. And sometimes I wonder, like, you can't understand the mind of God, and you can't understand his plan. But I sometimes find myself wondering if the purpose of this evil in the world right now, if what they're trying to do is basically spark this, what this Western white Christian reaction that will bathe the world in fire and make it so that the only people who are left are white Christians. And in a way, that would bring about a utopia, right? Like, we'd go back to fighting each other, but these existential threats that are posed by, international Jewry, that are posed by the Third World Horde, they would be negated. And it's this kind of weird, like, if you follow, assuming that like Christendom, I mean, I don't believe that God would allow Christendom to disappear from Earth, and white civilization is Christendom. It's the same thing. So it's like, you kind of wonder if on the long term, all of this evil asserting itself now with this technology is going to allow this kind of violent reassertion, like a phoenix, bursting back and just burning away all of the evil that's been created in the witnessed absence of Christian value.
The failure is in us. The failure is in us, right? It is us that listens to the honeyed words of the evil one, right? That always over promises and under delivers, right? It's like, everything will be awesome, bro, right? Like, just obey me, just destroy more stuff, right? You don't have to worship God, right? You don't have to control your passions, like everything, just destroy everything. I've got your back. But of course, the Lord of Lies, surprise, surprise, is a massive liar. I mean, I don't know how anyone could have, but I think this is one of the reasons why you need Ahrimanic evil first, because you have to convince a whole bunch of people that the evil one is in fact God, right? You turn it around. Okay, so you get all of these people who think that, actually that is the most powerful force in the universe, right? This is I struggle with this with Christianity for a while, until I realized, like, it is us that lets the evil one in, right? By not obeying the word of God, right? Like, this is why these rules exist, right? Like, when I was younger, like, oh bro, like, these rules, like, oh my God, they're like such a downer, right? Yeah, but you haven't seen, well, I guess now we are seeing what happens when you don't obey those rules. Like, these rules are not just some arbitrary thing that, like, God thought up because, like, oh my God, he's like such a downer man, right? And doesn't want you to have any fun. These rules are civilization preserving. Civilizations that do not follow these rules die out. Civilizations that put their women in charge die out, right? Civilizations that don't have children die out. Civilizations that engage in endless war with all that exists die out. These are all what you're dealing with, if you want to just take, like, the pure, I don't think I'm not a pure materialist at all, but let's say you're listening to this and you're a pure materialist, okay? These are rules for successful civilizations. They have survivorship bias. That's why they have been around for so long. That's why the ancient wisdom is not, right, put women in charge of your society and go to war with, like, everyone and everything that exists, because those civilizations don't fucking exist anymore, because you played yourself and you destroyed everything. I mean, I mean, this, you get all these people like, bro, Christianity, it's such a pussy religion, bro. Like, what we really need to do is like go to war with everything that exists. Yeah, I mean, yeah, go for it, mate. Like, see how that turns out, right? When you have no mercy, when you have no restraint,
I
when
mean,
you sorry, go on.
Yeah, even in a purely materialist frame, like look at Israel right now. That's their operating ethos. It's go to war with everything that exists. And while they still have control over the US's federal government, that's not going to last. They've made an enemy of the entirety of the human race. I mean, this is, you could go for a long way, for a long time saying that this is kind of a perennial aspect of Jewish civilization. But like everyone hates them, everyone. And the only thing keeping them afloat right now is that they have purchased the lesser men who rule over the United States. And they're not going to survive this century because they've made an enemy of all humanity.
It's a perennial story, right? You don't control the passions, you give in to baser emotions, you go to war with everything that exists, you have no restraint, no mercy, and it all ends in tears. I mean, there's no, I mean, I don't know, maybe someone in the chat will be like, Herder, you didn't think about like this one civilization that no one's ever heard of. These civilizations die out, and I think Israel is on the way out as well, although I highly suspect they already have a cunning plan for how they're going to get out from under that, sort of given the way they tend to operate, right? Like, they'll be like, oh, we shed a few million people, but it's cool. We've set up somewhere else now. We promise we'll be good this time. Like we're not like those, like, other Jews, we're going to behave. And then, I don't know, in like 100 years or something, it'll all kick off again, I guess. It's, I kind of think that in toto, from like the Christian perspective, it's a bit like that thing that Jesus says, like the poor will always be with you. I think the Jews will always be with us as well. And you've just got to figure out a way of dealing with them and sort of like stopping them from like ruling over you and messing everything up, basically.
Yeah, and again, it's a perennial issue. But yeah, I mean, there's, again, this is something that it's all darkness and doom and gloom. But again, like this can't succeed, right? The Lord made, he gave us creation, and until his return, creation will remain, right? It's just, I don't really know how to put that in a kind of in a materialist frame, but it's like, even if we get hit by some Carrington event from the sun or something and wipes out like 2 in a row, like separated by a couple of hours, and the whole world loses all of its technology, billions of people would die, but creation would remain. You can't negate even like the fear of nuclear annihilation. Like it's not.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the Bolsheviks. Okay, tried to wipe out the Russian Orthodox Church, didn't succeed. All right, like there have been so many attempts by various people to wipe out the church. It never ever works.
Right now, it's big in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And and the pagans will be like, oh well, what you really should have done was like abandon all of your principles and be like the enemy, and and like give vent to your passions and be like merciless, like. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's worked so far. They're like, oh yeah, but the fact that it happened in the first place, yeah, well, it's spiritual warfare, right? It's not just one-sided. Clearly, otherwise, none of this crap would like ever happen, So I mean, yeah, I'm reminded of that that thing that O'Brien says in 1984. The death of the cell is the vigor of the organism. Like the individual Christians, like, we may die, but like Jesus Christ, but that that allows Christianity to live on and to prosper. And I don't know, I think really that's like a pretty good reason. You know, if you got to give your life for anything, you could do a lot worse than that. Is all I'm saying. You know.
Yeah, I mean, as our friend Prudentialist says, martyrdom's back on the table.
Get in the truck, boys. We're gonna have a martyrdom. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, you can sort of imagine like, oh my god, like I mean, this is grim, but you can sort of imagine like a sort of like neo Bolshevik kind of like thing, you know, like saying someone who was like tortured and executed for the crime of racism or something, you know, right? They, you know, like
Yeah, the lesbian mulatto commissar has found you.
yeah, exactly. The mulatto commissar, like, you know, fucking, I don't know, covers them in like coal dust and lights them on fire. So that you will know what it's like to be black. White boy. 100 years later,
Don't give him any ideas, man.
100 years later, they're being venerated by the church after the church, like, you know, because this is the thing, they burn themselves out. They do, right? Like a fever or a plague. Like it's just unsustainable. Like they just burn themselves out. They just like, you know, kill until there's, you know, nothing else. Everything collapses, and then
Yeah, I mean, all of this evil does. Look at the quote unquote churches, right? That have women priests and vicars, and they have the pride flags, and there's no one there. There's no one in those churches.
Yeah,
those churches are husks. They're dead, right? There's nothing,
and they are husks. I mean, just go into them. Like,
yeah,
like,
I mean, the only vitality in you can find in Christianity, the only denominations that are growing is Orthodoxy, traditional Latin Rite Catholicism, so pre-1962 stuff, and you know, hardline Protestant sects.
Yeah, like the trad Lutherans.
Yeah, and they're actually growing, right?
Yeah.
Despite all of the attempts of you know, the boomers and, you know, this Luciferian evil to destroy them, they're still around, and they're getting stronger every day.
Well, I think I mean, I have met, I guess there are like some people who can't tell the difference. But to me, right, it is just immediately obvious, like whether God is in a place. Right? You go into like some churches and you're like, there is God here, right? The people who do this, they take this very, very seriously. You'll poke your head into one of those like, you know, Protestant or Unitarian abominations. Again, I'm not dissing like the Lutherans, right? Like, but you must admit Protestantism has spawned a lot of like really weird crap, and it's just a husk. It's just an empty building. You know, they're doing like grape juice and bickies on the lawn, or, you know, or something like crazy like that. You're like, there's nothing transcendent about this. It's just become this, like, it's the echo of the divine shorn from all divinity, if that makes sense. You know, it's just a hollow, a husk, I think you said, you know.
Yeah, I think echo is a really interesting way of putting it, because, you know, if you think about an echo, when you shout a phrase, it comes back to you truncated until eventually it's only one word or a portion of a word. And, you know, this phrase that gave rise to these quote unquote churches, right, is that, you know, we must modernize the church. We must modernize, we must update the church's teachings to fit with a modern audience. And it's like, what does that echo devolve into? You know, it just kind of fades away into nothing.
Yes, we must take the ancient wisdom that has, you know, guaranteed like fruitful civilization and update it for the modern world. Surely nothing bad can
go wrong. Well, you mentioned a couple of times like women in positions of power. Aristophanes wrote he wrote the Clouds, which everybody loves, but he also wrote a smaller one called the Assembly Women.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, it's exactly talking about that, like what happens when you put women in positions of power, and it's pretty funny.
I would highly recommend Aristophanes to the listener. Maybe I'll do like a podcast on Aristophanes. Like, one of the best things about Aristophanes is how just incredibly bawdy he is, right? Like I remember the first time I read Assemblywomen, and some of the jokes in there are, oh my God, they're hilarious.
Yeah, it's
And
amazing that they translate well.
yeah. Well, of course they translate well, right? Like there's this one scene where like, what is they're going on a sex strike, right? And they sing this little ditty or something like that, and it's like clits and tits, clits and tits. That's all that men ever think about. It's just like, man, some parts, like, humanity never freaking changes, right?
Yeah, this is over 2,000 years old,
Over
right?
2,000 years old, right? The fucking hubris of the modern world. Oh, we've got digital watches now, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a mobile phone. We don't need any of those
Yeah,
ancient.
we have labor-saving devices now, so men and women are magically the same.
Oh, mate. Yeah, Assemblywomen is amazing. I haven't read Clouds, actually. I should probably like check it out. Aristophanes is great. But the thing when I was reading it, I remember is that, like, thinking to myself, if he was around now, I think I was reading this at like peak woke, so it must have been like 2020 or something like that. And it struck me how, if Aristophanes was around now and published this, right, he would have been absolutely cancelled. They would have been like, oh my God, right, this is gender stereotyping, right? This is misogyny and no. It's 2,000 years old. 2,000, probably even more, actually.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, and like it's even got like communism in it, right? Like where
Yes.
the women are starting to propose like a banning private property and all that
Yep.
kind of shit. Like
Yep.
it's the same story over and over again.
Yeah, it's really an amazing play. For the listener who hasn't heard, basically, it's in Athens, and one day, all the women decide to like dress up as men and go to the Pnyx, which is like the voting square, and pretend to be men and like vote in all these like crazy policies, and they decide to make all property in common, and punch holes in the walls between all of the houses so that everybody lives in common. And then it just starts getting ridiculous that, like, if a woman is going to sleep with a man, every single uglier woman has to sleep with him first, or something crazy shit like that. It's epic. But again, what is also really epic is just all the dirty jokes that are just like, I mean, they're funny even today. They're funny even today,
Greeks got it done, man.
Right. So we're up to the hour. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, I mean, so I was looking a little bit more into Charlton.
Please.
He was writing about this stuff in the early 20th century. So like in 1908, he was doing a series of lectures and stuff. And at the end of one of his lectures, he's talking about like, how do we deal with the face of this evil, right? He says, it is easy to ask the question, what can I myself do in these painful times? The first thing one can do is to endeavor to understand things, to really see things. This brings up thoughts which are real forces, and these will have an effect. You cannot say, are not the good spirits going to intervene? They do intervene, to the extent that we open ourselves up to them, if we have the courage to do so. But first of all, we must be serious about understanding things. We must be deeply serious about trying to understand. So, if you're going to grapple with this kind of stuff, those are some good words to kind of keep in mind.
I think in that essay you sent me, they also make the point, which is very, very close to my heart, that the existence of existential evil presupposes the existence of an existential good. That was actually what pushed me towards Christianity originally. Because once evil became, because when before sort of COVID in like the 90s, sort of like early 2000s, the height of materialism that was sort of capped by the new atheism movement, long may it be dead and buried, there was this sort of mass confusion among the West about like what is good, what is evil, the moral relativism sort of like abounded. And then as the century, as the 21st century progressed, it became clear that there was such a thing as existential evil, right? Like not just, oh bro, we made a mistake, like, oh man, we misunderstood this a bit, right? Oh, I sort of, wanted to make a bit of money. But like actual full on existential evil. Like you could only describe it as evil, as existential evil.
Yeah, they
And then
see the fruits of their actions and they say, yeah, we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah. And then this presupposes an existential good. And so I went looking for it. And it does exist. And it's actually incredibly powerful.
Amen.
So I guess I would encourage listeners, if you're, sort of in a position where you're, not sure whether there is such a thing as existential good. Well, it's pretty obvious there is such a thing as existential evil. Therefore, it follows and is also an actual true thing that there is an existential good. Seek it out. It's pretty awesome. Anything else, Curtis?
No, I mean, if you're in the States and you want to get active doing something, join the Old Glory Club.
Yes, indeed. Do. It's a fabulous organization. They're good dudes. Very, very nice. Okay. So, well, thank you very, very much. And you can find them at oldgloryclub.com, I believe.
TheOldGloryClub.com.
TheOldGloryClub.com. You guys also have like a podcast, I think, going on.
Yeah, we've got 3 shows. Mondays, American Spirits, where we examine like the intellectual and philosophical grounding of what made America and what makes America. Also going through some of the more legalisms that built the modern state. It's very academic and it can be very dry, but it is absolutely worth the listen. On Wednesdays, the Chapter House, where a chapter is interviewed every week. Some of their representatives get a feel for what the chapter is like. And then Pony Express Radio on Thursdays is just a slop. It's just a slop show. It's a slop shoveling into the trough for all of our viewers to gorge themselves at.
The slop never ends. Right. Well, thank you so much. Also, you can be found on Twitter at, is it at NotMeNotYou?
It's not me, not you. Also
at NotMeNotYou. Also, I'll stick it in the description.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for joining me. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing next week. Stay tuned, but the interviews will be back at least for a bit. And I don't know, as long as I can keep up with the workload. Thank you so much for coming, man. And good night, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.